After decades of outcry and protests, everyone seems to have finally agreed that fuel subsidy removal in Nigeria is a good thing. Everyone finally seems to have come to this conclusion because, well, removing fuel subsidy really is a good thing in abstraction. But to really consider whether or not fuel subsidy removal is a good thing in Nigeria for the average Nigerian is an entirely different question. The argument and the reasoning behind fuel subsidy removal is no secret at this point. It took the government about 20 years, but they seem to have finally communicated to a great deal of the Nigerian people the reasons why subsidy must be removed. To recap, the reasons are as follows. The cost of providing aid to oil companies so that the price of oil can be regulated and fixed at the price below market realities have become grossly unsustainable. The money used to service this cost can be better employed in other more critical areas of the economy that will prove to be more productive in the long run. There is rampant corruption in the government that has seen a lot of these supposed subsidy funds being stolen. Reports suggest that around $6 billion or trillions of naira that were supposed to be used for fuel subsidy were stolen by top officials through various scams. Now, these are all very valid and noble arguments. With more than 20 trillion naira spent between 2011 to 2022, it is safe to say that the government is indeed spending way too much money on fuel subsidy and are going about it at an unsustainable rate. But to really determine whether fuel subsidy removal will end up being a good thing for the average Nigerian requires a more nuanced approach that doesn't examine fuel subsidy in abstraction but as a function of everything we know about Nigeria, the Nigerian government, and our recent history. Ultimately, the question of whether subsidy removal is a good thing for the average Nigerian boils down to the age-old question of whether to trade future promises that are not guaranteed for present enjoyment that may not last. A bird in hand, they say, is worth a million in the forest. But is this really true for everyone in every situation? Absolutely not. A bird in an unskilled hunter's hand may be worth less than no bird in a skilled hunter's hands. In this case, the question boils down to whether or not the benefit received from the government in the form of fuel subsidy is worth sacrificing for a promise of better things to come in the future. More particularly, promises from the Nigerian government that has been notorious for corruption, mismanagement of funds, and failure to back up its promises. For instance, one good thing to consider while asking this question is why fuel subsidy was ever a thing in the first place. Fuel subsidy was introduced in the country in 1973 to cushion the cost of petroleum products delivered to refineries. And along the way, the government decided that continuing this would be a very good way to ease the burden of higher fuel prices on the masses. Apparently, this will help the average Nigerian get by and in turn increase productivity and boost the economy. So, what changed? Does the government no longer care about easing the burden on the average Nigerian and boosting the economy, or have they simply chosen to do it in a different way? And if so, how are we sure that this time the results will be any better? And how are we to know that they won't just change their minds and focus on a new shiny policy in 10 or 20 years from now, after billions have already been stolen and millions of Nigerians have suffered for it? A lot of Nigerians will argue that they receive absolutely no benefit from the government. In fact, many would argue that the government actively holds them back with harmful policies, insecurity, among other things, while collecting part of the little they earn. The only thing, really, that most Nigerians can point to as a benefit they get from the government is the subsidy that allows them to spend less on oil. Now, all of that is going away for promises. There is no denying that promises are logical and they make sense. There are many reasons to support the removal of fuel subsidy in theory, but how will it play out in reality? Now that subsidy is gone, will we truly see the impact that is promised in other areas such as electricity, employment rate, public infrastructure, transportation, foreign exchange access, among other things? Does the government have enough credibility, skill, tact, trustworthiness? And of course, there is also the question of the government's wasteful spendings. Currently, many Nigerians believe that the government wastes too much money on needless spendings, on taking care of politicians, and on frivolous projects. Many would argue that this is an area that requires just as much attention. So, will fuel subsidy removal end up being a good thing? Or is the best we can do to hope that corruption in a subsidy-less Nigeria is a little less than the corruption we used to have when fuel subsidy was a thing? Or will things get even worse? Let us know your opinions in the comment section. Once again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. See you in the next video.